Oh, good evening, folks. Welcome. Welcome into 1017 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome again into another edition of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and way on down yonder, there she is, PLPC Carla McCormick.
Evening.
You got to turn your mic on there.
Whoops.
Oh,
Whoops.
good evening.
The ace of the airwaves missed flipping your mic switch on.
I hit the button, but
He
it was
knew
the
I was
wrong
going to
one.
make fun of him. See?
Yeah. And we've mentioned the ace of the airwaves. Of course, he is Rapid Ruben Wright. who
Good evening.
keeps us flying. How you guys doing?
I'm doing
Excellent.
pretty okay. Happy Friday, TGIF.
So we've been doing Wellness Week this week on Strategies for Living, and we've covered a lot of material this week.
We have.
Self-Care 101, and we talked about getting the mind healthier, getting the body healthier. Yesterday we talked about getting the spirit healthier. And, you know, we take those bandages out to cover physical wounds. We brush our teeth to prevent cavities. But why aren't we taught how to treat emotional pain? You ever wonder that?
All the time.
Yeah. So loneliness, rejection. We know the basics of protecting our bodies, but what about the basics of protecting our minds and hearts? So we're going to talk about emotional first aid this evening
I like that.
to cap Wellness Week here on Strategies for Living. And thank you for tuning in, folks. We are brought to you by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana. They've been helping individuals and families for 60 years. We're also brought to you by Milestones Counseling Center and by Resilient House, by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, and by Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts. We are coming back to learn emotional first aid today and how to practice it here on Strategies. Stay with us. If we're talking addiction prevention, education, and treatment in Shreveport-Bossier for 60 years, we're talking about CADA. Let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about treatment. Let's talk about getting your life back. The Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, CADA, has been helping individuals and families in Shreveport and Bossier City for 60 years now. CADA provides intensive residential treatment as well as outpatient services too. CADA treats women with children, pregnant women, adolescents, veterans. CADA has helped thousands. Welcome back in to 1017 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan, talking about improving and practicing and just understanding emotional first aid today. You know, we don't rush. We don't rush to the doctor every time we have a cough or scrape our knee or have a minor little stomach ache. And what do? We go to the medicine cabinet. We get a Band-Aid, or we get some Tums, or we treat things like that in our homes. And if we don't get better, then we
go to the doctor.
We go to the doctor. But at some point, but the majority of time, we're perfectly able to nurse ourselves back to health. And we do that very naturally, physically. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that psychologically and emotionally?
Well, I think we do part of that well. I mean, we handle most of the things that come along pretty well. But when it's the part when things get bad that we don't reach out for help.
Yeah, and I think we need to understand that there is emotional, psychological first aid when we do sustain some type of psychological injury, and we need to be able to nurse ourselves back to health without the assistance necessarily of a mental health professional. Or if we're going to see a mental health professional, how do we take care of ourselves between office visits? Because let's face it, we live in the world, right? And
Right.
The world has everybody in it and everything in it, from Mother Teresa to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, I guess I think I fit somewhere in the middle.
I think, I doubt if I fit on the Mother Teresa end, but I hope I don't fit on the Jeffrey Dahmer end. But because we're all in this world, we're going to have some common psychological injuries that might require emotional, psychological first aid. Let's talk about some of those. Rejection. We get rejected. We get rejected all the time. Dating partners, employers, friends, spouses. Rejections are like emotional cuts. They're scrapes. They're just the cuts and scrapes of daily life. Failure. And think about this. We frequently fail to attain what our goals are. Maybe it's passing a test in school. Maybe it's completing a task that we set out for ourselves. Failure to to get the raise at work. Or be part of a group that I want to be part of. Failures are kind of like the emotional colds.
You mean they happen quite frequently and
Yeah.
often?
Yeah, and when they're left untreated, like a cold, if you don't treat it, what can happen? It can turn into pretty severe, even psychological pneumonia. Maybe we could call that depression, huh?
Yeah, or at the very least, you just get snot all over everybody.
I can't argue with that. Loneliness. We all experience periods where we're lonely, as though our existing relationships aren't fulfilling our emotional needs. And the problem is, the longer we feel lonely and disconnected, the weaker our relationship muscles are going to be and become. There's loss. We're living in this world. This world has loss. We regularly experience losses in our lives. Relatives pass away, a friend moves out of town, our kids leave home, our favorite pet passes away. How we rebuild our lives after a loss can determine whether we emerge emotionally stronger or psychologically weaker. Brooding and rumination. It's easy to get caught up in cycles where we brood or we ruminate, where we feel a compelling urge to stew or to, stay sad or angry, and we just want those feelings. Give me the devil I know sometimes, and we find it difficult to think of anything else. But doing so is like It's like pricking our finger. The guilt. We spend several hours a week experiencing mild to moderate guilt when which if we take to excess, can hijack our attention and make it difficult for us to concentrate on our work and possibilities. And lingering guilt can poison our most cherished relationships and sometimes impact entire families. And then there's low self-esteem. We have bouts of low self-esteem. We have days where we feel incredibly low, maybe self-critical about ourselves and our capabilities. So having low self-esteem is like having a weakened emotional immune system. It makes us more vulnerable and more likely to sustain more psychological injuries. So there's my case, Carla, that, okay, we're here in the world, and again, the world is the world, and we have to integrate into it, and we have to adapt into it. So we humans need to be able to practice emotional first aid. We're going to talk about some of the ways that we can do that. There's a great TED Talk. Have you seen the TED Talk on emotional first aid?
I have not.
He's a psychologist. He's Guy Winch, and in the TED Talk,
I love TED Talks.
I do too. I mean, they're great, aren't they? And we're going to talk about some of what he lays out in the TED Talk today. We're going to kind of summarize it. But if you want to go, you can, go to accessted.com, and he lays out, I think it's 7 ways to reboot your emotional health. And you can start any place that you want. So, he says, Dr. Winch says, you put a bandage on a cut, you take antibiotics to treat an infection, no questions asked. In fact, questions would be asked if you didn't apply first aid when necessary. So why isn't that true in mental health? How many times? In fact, there's a song by the Eagles. I don't know if you've got it, Reuben. Get over it. It's got
I don't know that.
You don't
song.
know that song? That is from the album, Reuben, help me out here, the CD When the Eagles Came Back. Do you remember the CD I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name.
Okay. And so
if you hadn't asked me, I
you
would
could have done
remembered.
it. So that CD, so the Eagles lead singer that had left, and then he came back, when hell freezes over.
Yep,
hell
that's it.
freezes
Yep.
over. Because on the way out, the guy said, "I'll return to the Eagles when hell freezes over." So the
And then
CD,
he came back.
the CD was "Hell Freezes Over."
Was that Don Henley?
Don Henley, yeah,
Okay.
when Don Henley got back with the Eagles, and one of the songs on that CD, and Alton McKnight loved this song. So whenever I travel with Alton, I had to hear it over and over and over. I remember when the CD first came out, we happened to be attending a seminar over in Dallas Fort Worth, and Alton and I were in between sessions and stuff, going around finding restaurants and things to do. And if I heard "Get Over It" once, I heard it 100 times. Alton loved that song, and especially one line in the song. I'd like to find your inner child and kick its little ass.
I feel like that sometimes.
Get over it. Well, yeah, and how many times do we expect that? Do we say, look, just get over it? We say that to our spouses. We say that to our partners. We say that to our, business associates. Hell, you and I have said it to Reuben.
Right.
In addiction work, I've just had this conversation today with a client whose family was just saying, just stop.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You know, just stop. And unless you've been there, unless you've paid attention, you don't get it. And I think all of these things are things we all have, but maybe sometimes we're not tuned in.
Any of us, if we're honest with ourselves and each other, any of us who have ever ruminated over a rejection or agonized over some failure, we know that emotional injuries can be just as crippling as physical ones.
Well, an emotional pain can cause physical pain.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the mind-body connection, absolutely. Absolutely. And now, you know, people like Joan Bursinko back in the late 70s and early 80s started this whole idea of mind-body medicine. Claudia Black, Joan Bursinko. And, you know, it was brilliant then, but as the years have gone on and we have the, you know, the MRIs and the brain scans capability, we can actually see that. We can see that happening.
Well, my client today said, it hurts. And
Yeah.
I said, I know.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it physically hurts. And I said, I know.
Yeah.
And that's pain.
Yeah.
And that's emotional pain.
That's emotional
deep,
pain.
deep emotional pain.
So when we come back, we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about some ways that Dr. Guy Winch in the TED Talk says that we can practice emotional first aid, and ways that we can actually reboot our emotional health starting right now. And if we reboot our emotional health, we also can reboot our physical health, because they're all tied together.
Emotional, physical, spiritual.
Exactly. He's a brilliant man. I hear it. I hear it. Get over it.
I need my headphones.
Yeah, we'll be back.
If you or someone you love is struggling to pay attention,
And welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Marriage and family therapist David McMillan, PLPC Carla McCormick. We are wrapping up Wellness Week here on Strategies, talking about emotional first aid and some ways that you can practice it. Psychologist Guy Winch lays out some useful ways, 7 of them in fact, to reboot your emotional health, and you can start right now. So number 1 is pay attention, tune in, pay attention to the emotional pain, recognize it when it's happening, and work to treat it before it feels all encompassing. I guess one of these is just kind of give yourself permission, right, to pay attention and to tune into this.
Would that be called mindfulness?
I think that would be a part of mindfulness. The body evolved the sensation of physical pain, and that's to alert us that something's wrong and we need to address it. That's what so many physical symptoms are. The same is true in emotional pain. If a wrong that we need to address is done, then to us, if we would be wrong if we didn't address a physical pain, right? To let it go and let it go. And many times when we do, we end up in the emergency room in trouble. Why wouldn't we do the same thing with emotional pain? If a rejection, a failure, a bad mood, it doesn't get better, it's not getting better, then it means you may have sustained a psychological wound and you need to treat it. So loneliness can be devastatingly damaging to your psychological and as you've pointed out, physical health, Carla. So when you or a friend or a loved one is feeling socially or emotionally isolated, you need to take action. You need to redirect your gut reaction when you fail. We all fail, all the time, right? I mean, failure is just part of living.
Well, you don't fail if you don't try.
That's true, and some of us use that as a defense. But the nature of psychological wounds makes it easy for one to lead to another. So failure can often drive you to focus on what you can't do instead of focusing on what you can do. That can then make you less likely to perform at your best, which will make you even more focused on your shortcomings, and the cycle just goes on and on and on. To stop this sort of emotional spiral, learn to ignore the post-failure gut reaction of feeling helpless and demoralized, and make a list of factors that you can control were you to try again. For instance, think about preparation and planning, how you might improve each of them. This kind of exercise will reduce feelings of helplessness and improve your chance of future success. And then monitor and protect your self-esteem. When you feel like and we all do this, I think, we put ourselves down, don't we? And sometimes we do it very verbally.
And it's a habit. Out
loud. But most often we do it in our heads. We've got an ongoing dialogue in our heads. When, pay attention to that and take a moment and just be compassionate. Be compassionate with yourself. Self-esteem is like your immune system. It's your psychological immune system, and it buffers you from emotional pain and strengthens your resilience, your emotional resilience. So it's very important that you monitor your self-esteem, and you avoid. You make a decision. You make a choice and a decision to avoid putting yourself down, and particularly when you're already hurting, when you're already feeling bad.
One of the things that I have clients do sometimes is to keep a little pad of paper next to them and just make a tally mark every time they say something negative to themselves. It's sometimes amazing to them how many times during a day they do that. And I believe it's a habit. I believe things like, "Oh, you're so stupid. Oh, you idiot. oh, you're so ugly,
Yeah.
or those things that we just constantly berate ourselves with. You can even go so it's almost like emotional cutting.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you're just
Yeah.
gonna just keep whacking away at yourself. Who can have if I talk to you the way some people or if I talk to a client the way they talk to themselves, they would fire me.
Yeah, they wouldn't come back to see you, would they? So that's there's an exercise right there that you can do. If you're talking bad about yourself in your own head to yourself, imagine that that's a friend. So imagine a dear friend is saying to themselves, is feeling the way that you're feeling towards yourself. How would you express compassion to that dear friend? Right?
What kindness would you
What support would you give to him or her? Okay, so do that to yourself. It's kind of like sometimes a technique that we use is the empty chair, right?
Exactly.
And so it's kind of our own internal empty chair technique. Put yourself in that other chair and put yourself in the place of supporting your friend.
Or if you're looking back and you're judging harshly, yourself at a younger age because mistakes you made, give yourself a break. I mean, be kind to little David and little Carla.
Yeah.
They were doing the best they could.
They did the best they could with what they had, yeah. When negative thoughts take over, and we all know that negative thoughts in our heads can sometimes take over our minds, try to distract them with positive distraction. So all of us have the tendency to replay distressing events in our mind without seeking new insight or trying to solve a problem. What we're doing there is we're brooding, right? We're brooding. And that, especially when it becomes habitual, can lead to deeper psychological pain. So you gotta disrupt it in some way. Take that unhealthy rumination, distract yourself by engaging in some task that requires concentration. Go get a crossword puzzle. Go get a Sudoku. Try to recall the names of all of the kids in your 5th grade class.
Move a muscle. Get up and go for a walk.
Yeah, exactly. Studies show that even 2 minutes, couple of minutes, that's not long.
No.
Even 2 minutes of distraction will reduce the urge to focus on the negative, unhealthy. You can do 2 minutes, can't you?
I probably can do most things for 2 minutes.
I can do 2 minutes. Yeah. So it's that easy. But we've got to disrupt that rumination, that pattern. It's important because, again, that's our immune system. That's our psychological immune system. Yeah.
Well, and yes, because that is, for me, that's my barometer, my healthy barometer. How am I feeling inside about myself?
Yeah.
And when I'm feeling low, then what happens? Everything that I experience in the world feels like it's an attack at me. It's meant for me,
Yeah.
And that's how I see the world. When I'm feeling good, I see everything with a good light,
Yeah. We're talking 7 ways to practice emotional first aid from a TED Talk by that you can find. Who's the psychologist again, Carla? It's Dr.
Guy Winch.
Dr. Winch. Okay, now this is a difficult one, but I'm going to double, triple, quadruple asterisk this one.
Okay.
Because, and I go back to, you and I have talked about how important the road less traveled was to me. It was like Scott Peck had a 2x4 on every page that he hit me between the eyes with.
So you had an emotional epiphany.
Many of them in the road less traveled. One of the things that he said was that got my attention, that was like an emotional 2x4 between my eyes. He said, from birth to death, life is a series of things that we have to give up. In other words, loss.
Right.
And then he laid them out in a normal life. We have to give up being in the womb. We have to, where all of our needs are taken care of, and we don't even have to ask. Everything, it's warm and fuzzy in there, and we're loved, and then we're born, into the world. And then we have to give up the being 2 and 3, where everything revolves around us. We have to give up being 7 and 8, and we move from being everything being fun, and I think that may be happening earlier and earlier, because for us it probably happened in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but I think it may be happening now in preschool and kindergarten
Let's hope not.
for kids. I hope not too, but I mean, there's a lot of work now by the time a kid gets to kindergarten, and even pressure.
Right.
And I worry about that. Anyway, I'm getting off task. We have to give up some physical agility as we move on into our 20s and 30s. Into our 50s, things start to break down and hurt that didn't hurt before.
And sag.
And sag, yeah. You had to mention that. And eventually we have to give up life itself. So birth to death is a series of things we have to give up. And so grief, Scott Peck says, is how we navigate through that. So what Dr. Winch says in emotional first aid is that loss is a part of life. We have to find meaning in loss because it's just a part of the deal. It's a part of life, but it can scar us. It can keep us from moving forward if we don't treat those emotional wounds that it creates. If sufficient time has passed and you're still struggling to move forward after a loss, you need to introduce a new way to think about it. Specifically, the most important thing you can do to ease your pain and recover is to find meaning in the loss and try to see what the purpose of it is, derive a purpose of it. It might be hard, but think of what you might have gained from the loss. For instance, I lost my spouse, but you know what? I've become a lot closer to my kids. Now that's hard. That's very hard if you've lost a spouse. But if the result is that you've grown closer to your kids, okay, well that could be a meaning in that loss.
Well, and it could be something less dramatic. I
Sure.
lost my job, but I got a better job,
There you go.
I lost a friend, but I learned something in that friendship,
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we're talking about here, is resiliency.
I
The
think it is.
ability to kind of get a blow but bounce back.
Yeah, adaptability. One of the key things is we in life from birth to death, and it starts with when sperm meets egg, is the process of integration and adaptability. And if we don't have those things, what happens? We probably never develop to term and get born, right?
Right.
And that adaptability and integration process has to continue throughout our life. I don't think we think about that enough. So consider how you might gain or help others gain a new appreciation for life. Imagine the changes you could make that will help you live a life that's more aligned with your purpose and your values. So loss is going to happen. That just has to be accepted. Find meaning in loss. Find meaning. We're talking about emotional first aid and how to practice it. We will come back and complete that, and we'll talk about some skills that we can bring to the fore as Strategies for Living rolls on. Stay with us.
Down at this yellow-haired girl, Mr. Jones strikes up a conversation.
When your child or grandchild is in trouble, you'll do almost anything to help.
doing exceptionally well this evening.
It's Friday, you know.
Yeah, he's
He is on point.
He's on point today. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. We're talking about Rapid Ruben Wright, folks, our ace producer here at Strategies for Living. Welcome back into Strategies on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. We're talking about emotional first aid today to wrap up Wellness Week. Have you enjoyed Wellness Week? Have you learned some things?
I've really enjoyed Wellness Week, and yes, I have.
We're going to have to do some more themed weeks.
I like that.
All right, so we're summarizing the ways to practice emotional first aid. You can find all of this in a TED Talk. Who's the guy again? Dr. Winch?
Winch.
Dr. Winch. A Guy Winch.
Emotional first aid.
Psychologist Guy Winch. So one of the things he says is don't let excessive guilt linger. Guilt can be useful in small doses. It alerts you to, take action and mend a problem, and that can be a useful thing. It can be useful in relationships with another person, but excessive guilt, he says, is toxic in that it wastes your emotional and intellectual energies. It distracts you from other tasks. It prevents you from enjoying life. One of the best ways to resolve lingering guilt is to offer an effective apology.
What are the parts of a good apology?
Well, to first of all focus on what did you do, what was your responsibility, what was your part in it, and then accept full responsibility, and then try to make amends.
Okay,
try to communicate that.
So here's my brief answer.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It was my fault, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
Excellent.
Or how can I fix it?
Excellent.
I'm sorry, my fault. How can we fix it?
Excellent.
No, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, because the but, you got to get off your butt. Because the but takes away anything good that you happened to say before. The but just erases.
Yes.
Yeah. So you got to get off your butt.
So I'm sorry I yelled at you, David, but you made me so mad.
And you just erase the,
Exactly.
I'm sorry you yelled at me. So, don't let that excessive guilt linger. An apology is what you need to do. And then finally, learn what treatments for emotional wounds work for you. Last
Because
but not
everybody's
least.
different.
Yeah. So pay attention to yourself. Become a student. Become a student of yourself. Become curious about yourself. Tune in. How do you personally deal with emotional wounds? So do you shrug them off? Do you get really upset but recover quickly? Do you get upset and recover slowly? Do you squelch your feelings? Do you push them down? Because people do different things. What do you do?
Well, and are you angry?
Yeah.
Are you yelling at the kids, but but that's not really what's wrong. I got my feelings hurt at work.
Yeah.
I mean, tune in.
Tune in and use the analysis, use the self-analysis to help yourself understand which emotional first aid treatments are going to work best for you in whatever situation you're in, just as you would identify which of the many pain relievers on the shelves. As you go to the medicine shelf, you open it. If you've got an earache, you don't want to take a Tums out and take Tums for your earache, right?
Right.
No, because it doesn't work,
Well, and you may have to try more than one.
And you may have to, yeah. But you want to match up, the treatment, the first aid treatment with actually what's going on. And that's what he's talking about here. Learn what treatments for emotional wounds work out for you. Same for building emotional resilience. Try out various techniques. Figure out which are easiest for you to implement and which tend to be the most effective for you. But mostly, get into the habit of taking note of your own psychological health and do that on a regular basis.
And that can be as simple as, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
I don't feel right. I feel squirrely. I feel agitated. I feel edgy. I feel sad. What's behind that?
Yeah.
What am I feeling? And then you can take that one step further. Why am I feeling that way?
Absolutely. So some of the emotional first aid skills, reach out, protect, reassure, organize, and reinforce. So this could be to self or it could be for somebody else. provide a caring presence. Don't try to fix somebody. Don't try to go into the rescue, help him or her. Oh, Carla, come on, let's just look at the bright side.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
So, can you tell me what happened? I'm so sorry this is happening to you or this happened to you. Reach out. Then protect. Serve as a protector. If necessary, protect the survivor from unhelpful helpers, from whatever's going on, and from the consequences of the survivor's own forgetful or impulsive behavior. Reassure. Be an information advocate. Acknowledge the survivor's need for information. I know what you really want right now is information about whatever.
So these are emotional first aid skills for people who are trying to help other people going through a really hard and difficult time.
But I think you can also do these within your, you can also be mindful and do these within yourself.
So I can use these skills on me, for you,
yeah.
Okay.
Because again, we have this ongoing dialogue in our minds. We are many parts. I mean, I'm not saying that we're multiple personalities, but we are many parts. We have like an internal family within us.
Well, I have meetings with myself daily.
That's my point. In fact, we're probably going to do a show at some point on our internal family, our internal systems, because we're not multiple personalities, but we have many parts, and sometimes they compete with each other. So we can do this all within ourselves as well as for other people. Organize. Help the survivor develop a simple plan that's going to guide him or her through the next horrible hours ahead. Focus the survivor on, okay, what's important now? What's important right now? Encourage one step at a time, even if it's 1 inch at a time. One step at a time. And then reinforce. Listen for the survivor's source of strength. The source of strength may be family, God, their church, an animal, a positive thought, even a piece of clothing. Once you've identified the survivor's source of strength, do what you can to help him or her hold on to it. Help the survivor to do special personal things that he or she may want to do. For example, the survivor may want a lock of hair from a deceased loved one, or may want to reminisce about the life that they had together with let's say if it's the loss of a person.
Right.
And so you can reinforce by listening. Now, we don't have time, but again, reach out, protect, reassure, organize, reinforce. We've mentioned on past programs some things that you don't say. Maybe we need to do another program in the future.
I think we can do a whole show about
on these things and what
the
to say,
emotional damage that you can do,
and what not to say. So this is emotional first aid. I hope this is a helpful thing. When we come back from this next break, the ego is a wily thing. All of us have one. And so what happens is we can get in, that ego can get in our own way. So to close up this evening, we'll toss around some ideas of how you can get yourself out of the way, or you can get out of your own way, especially with your ego self, your operating system. Can we do that?
I think we can try.
All right, we're wrapping up Wellness Week with ideas about emotional first aid this evening here on Strategies. We'll be back. There are a lot of places that you can buy insurance, but there
darling, you got to let me know. Should I stay or should I go?
And welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. So this emotional first aid stuff that we've been talking about, wrapping up Wellness Week, it's simple, Carla, but it's not easy. They're straightforward and simple, but it's not easy for helpers to meet the needs of the survivor or of the person you're trying to help, and your own needs. All human beings are, we're and that's the ego. We're full of our values, our beliefs, our strengths, our weaknesses, our opinions, our prejudices. All of that is what I'm calling the ego, the operating system. And these characteristics that make us unique individuals also show up when we're trying to help others. So how do you learn to not let your ego, your beliefs, your prejudices, your personality, your needs get in the way of helping, someone else? There's some common things that we can do, and these include self-centered helper. I love helping. It makes me feel so good.
So right now we're looking at that these are character traits of people as they are helpers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The professor. Let me give you some good advice. Super helper. Get out of the way. I'll take care of everything. The cheerleader. Let's think positively. Mr. or Miss Fix-It.
That's not always what us cheerleaders say.
I know. Mr. or Miss Fix-It. What's the problem? We'll take care of this in no time. The saint. Let us pray. Are the judge. How in the world did you get into this predicament?
Fine mess you've gotten yourself into this time, little lady.
You asked me during the break, which one am I, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I'm definitely, I've got to fight being super helper. I've got to be very aware that I have a tendency to be a rescuer, and I need to stay out of that, rescuer, victim, persecutor triangle, because it's trapped me many, many times. So I got to be aware that I'm super helper, and I have a propensity to be Mr. Fix-It, right? So those are mine. What about you?
I'm definitely the cheerleader. I'm definitely going to cheer you on. I'm definitely going to root for you. And then if you don't do stuff, sometimes I will turn into Mrs. Fix-It, and I'll work harder on your problem than you do.
Okay, so once you identify which one of these kind of is your inner natural, then what you've got to do, these are your helping tendencies, right? What you've got to do, your challenge is to not let it interfere with the things we've talked about this evening.
Right. To know that about yourself and not let yourself become that.
Right. It's getting out of your own way.
Correct.
And when every time we practice this, every time we do this, we're building, our internal and actually soul self, spiritual self, because then the ego's not running the show. Who we really are is,
Well, that goes for everything that we've talked about all week. As soon as I'm aware of my feelings, then I can change them.
Absolutely. Folks, thank you for tuning in to Strategies for Living. Hope you've enjoyed being a part of Wellness Week as much as we have. We've been presented by CADA, by Jerry Anderson State Farm, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Resilient House, by Jacobs Well Inspirational Books and Gifts. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call that you could make, who would you call? What would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For PLPC Carla McCormick and for Reuben Wright, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Have a great weekend, folks.
Breaking news and trending talk. This is 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. KEEL, Shreveport.